Okay, so let me start with the homage to the Buddha. So I chant in Pali, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Oh, that is homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so we're continuing now with our series on the paths to liberation in early Buddhism. And so far we have covered the Noble Eightfold Path, and then the sequential training, and the 7 factors of enlightenment. And now we come to another presentation of the path, which becomes very influential within the Theravada tradition, and that is called the 7 stages of purification. And the source for that particular presentation of the path is a sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's sutta number 24, and is called in Pali the Rata Vinita Sutta, which is translated the relay of chariots. And the sutta takes the form of a conversation between 2 of the Buddha's monk disciples. There's Venerable Sariputta and another monk named Venerable Puna Mantaniputta. And in the sutta, it's Sariputta who asks questions to the Venerable Puna Mantaniputta. But of course, Sariputta is asking these questions not because he doesn't know the answers, but he's trying to test the understanding of the Venerable Puna. Okay, I'm not going to go through the sutta in details, but I'm just going to take the main portion, the most important portion of the sutta, where we see the 7 stages of purification. And first, the 7 stages of purification are illustrated by means of a simile. So I'm going to start with section 14, where we find the simile. Okay, so the simile revolves around King Pasenadi, the king of Kosala, and he's living at his capital. Let me increase the size of this. Okay, so the king is living at his capital at Savatthi, and he wants to go to another city named Saketa, where he also has a palace. And so along the way, to make it easy for him to travel along the way, 7 chariots are set up for him. Okay, so the king leaves Savatthi, and he leaves his palace in Savatthi, and he gets in the first chariot. Then by means of the first chariot, he reaches the second chariot. Then he takes the second chariot. Then he reaches the third chariot. And then from the third, he goes to the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, till he arrives at the 7th chariot. And then by means of the 7th chariot, then he arrives at the palace in Saketa, the destination city. Okay, so now in section 15, we have the application of the simile. And here we find the 7 stages of purification. And so we start off with purification of virtue, or sila visuddhi. And so the by means of purification of virtue, one arrives at purification of mind. And when you've attained purification of mind, then you arrive at purification of view. Then through purification of view, you reach purification by overcoming doubt. By the purification for overcoming doubt, you reach the purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the 5th purification. Yeah, I just don't want to repeat the whole name. It's too long. Okay. Then by the fifth purification, you arrive at the sixth purification, purification by knowledge and vision of the way or the practice. And then by purification of the practice, one reaches purification by knowledge and vision. And then by purification of knowledge and vision, then one arrives at final nibbana without clinging, which is the goal of the living the spiritual life under the Buddha. Okay, so if we just abstract the essence of the sutta, what we see is a sequence of 7 stages in which each stage leads to the next. So I've laid this out in this notes file by way of a list of the 7 purifications. And then the last one you could see points to the goal of the holy life, which is the attainment of nibbana through non-clinging. And now I find that this sutta and this series of the 7 purifications are a bit problematic. And one problem is that several of these terms, important terms, we don't find any place else in the suttas. Okay. And they're not defined in the suttas themselves. Most of them are not defined. And even the sequence of 7 stages is pretty much unique to the sutta. Yeah, I would think, in the Anguttara Nikaya, we have numerical groups. And so you would think in the Book of Sevens of the Anguttara Nikaya that you would find several suttas about the 7 stages, but there are none there. And at the end, one of the suttas at the end of the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, one finds 9 purifications, which includes the 7 purifications, but also adds purification of wisdom and purification of liberation. Yeah, so that's, it raises some questions. Maybe we could have a little suspicion that maybe this sutta doesn't come from the earliest period from the life of the Buddha himself. Maybe it came from like a generation or 2 generations later when the early Sangha is trying to elaborate on the stages of the path. Okay, but still within the Theravada tradition, this sequence of 7 stages plays a very important role because it serves as the basis for the scheme of the path laid down in this influential work, the Visuddhimagga. Yeah, so the Visuddhimagga, the expression means the path of purification. And so it's natural that it will draw upon these 7 purifications from the Majjhima Nikaya. And then the Visuddhimagga bases some of its detailed explanations upon an older treatise included in the Sutta Pitaka called the Patisambhidamagga, which maybe was composed perhaps in the 2nd century before the 2nd century BC. Yeah, so the Visuddhimagga ascribed to the commentator Buddhaghosa is around the 5th century of the Common Era, and it draws upon the Patisambhidamagga from perhaps the 2nd century before the Common Era. Okay, so I prepared a chart for showing the meaning of the 7 purifications in the Visuddhimagga, but we're going to look at them in more detail. Okay, so first we start off, the foundation is the Sila Visuddhi, or purification of virtue, purification of conduct, behavior. And of course, the Visuddhimagga is a book composed by a monk for other monks. So it will explain purification of virtue by way of the monastic practices. And so we have the Visuddhimagga uses a scheme of the fourfold purification of conduct, which begins by observing the rules of the monastic code, the Patimokkha. And then also it includes on the purification of virtue, restraint of the senses, acquiring one's material support by right livelihood, and then reflection on the use of the requisites, that is, robes, food, dwelling place, and medicines. And for a lay Buddhist practitioner, then you would say that the first of the aspect of purification of virtue would be living in accordance with the basic Buddhist precepts, the 5 precepts. And also it can include a right livelihood and living a fairly simple life, just being satisfied with a reasonable standard of living. Okay, then we come, the next purification is called purification of mind. And I think Visuddhimagga and the commentaries usually describe this as access concentration and absorption. Absorption is jhana, and access is the concentration approaching jhana. Yeah, but some other sources in the commentaries speak about 2 different approaches to the development of insight. So the 2 approaches is the vehicle of calm and the vehicle of pure insight. Okay, so in the vehicle of calm, one first develops samadhi to the level of access concentration or absorption concentration, to the jhanas or to a state of concentration close to the jhanas. And so with this approach, after one develops strong samadhi, then one takes up the development of insight. So in this approach, the prior attainment of access concentration or absorption concentration, that is considered purification of mind. Okay, the other approach is called the vehicle of pure insight. And this approach doesn't employ the development of samatha or strong samadhi as the basis for developing insight. And so in this approach, the meditator starts directly with mindfully noting the changing mental and material processes. And as one goes on noting the changing phenomena, then the mind becomes more and more concentrated. And that is a kind of samadhi based on insight. And that degree of samadhi is sufficient for actual insight to arise. And so in this type of meditation, that level of calm or samadhi is considered purification of mind. Yeah, so among contemporary meditation masters, we say that this first approach to one who has made it sort of widespread today is the Venerable Pa Auk Sayadaw of Myanmar, and maybe the one most famous for the pure insight approach is Mahasi Sayadaw, and maybe even Ajahn Chah. So it's a little bit hard to pin Ajahn Chah down. Okay, so now we have purification of mind, and now we come to the next purification, which is the starting point for the development of wisdom. Yeah, so here with the first purification, we have the aspect of sila, or good conduct. The second purification, the aspect of samadhi. And then starting with the third, we have the development of wisdom, or panya. Okay, so the third purification, this is called purification of view. And one begins this purification by investigating the mental and material dhammas, that is, the dhammas of the five aggregates, with regard to their special characteristics. So now one has to start examining one's experience and sort of breaking the experience down into the different components, the mental and material components. So usually we have the idea that I am a self, I am a truly existing individual, I am a substantial person. So, but now in this stage, one starts investigating to see what is actually present, and one sees there is this material body made up of the four elements, earth, water, fire, air, and other types of material phenomena. And on the mental side, one sees there is feeling, the sort of quality of experience being pleasant, painful, or neutral. There are the perceptions and ideas. There are the volitions, the acts of will, the desires, motivations, and so forth. And, yeah, and then there is consciousness, the six types of consciousness, to the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Okay, and then after one breaks the experience down into the five aggregates, then one groups the four mental aggregates together into nama, and the material aggregate is rupa. And so now one sees oneself as what is called nama rupa, that is a collection of mental and material phenomena without any inner self, any substantial self inside or behind the five aggregates. So this is called purification of view. Okay, so from purification of view, then one moves to the next stage, which is called purification by overcoming doubt. And so in this stage, one examines, investigates the conditions for the mental and material phenomena. And so first, one could see the conditions by way of the present conditions for each of the five aggregates. Yeah, I won't go into detail, but just treat this in a general way. Yeah, so one sees that each of the five aggregates has its present conditions, but then one also applies the principle of paticca samuppada, dependent origination, to understand how these mental and material phenomena have originated from past lives through ignorance, craving, and karma. And so at this stage, one gets the clear understanding that the present five aggregates have originated from the ignorance, craving, and karma of the past, and our present ignorance, craving, and karma will give rise to five aggregates in a future life. Okay, now from the purification by overcoming doubt, one comes to the fifth stage, which is called purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path. Let's put this simply, of true path and the false path. And one does so by observing the arising and passing away of the mental and material phenomena. Now, as the insight becomes strong, then for many people, certain kind of special, or we could say wonderful experiences occur, such as seeing lights coming out from the body, experiencing states of deep joy or deep tranquility, great enthusiasm for the practice, and so on. And so what happens is that many meditators who lack good advice become attached to these special experiences and think these are signs of real attainment. I've reached the stage of stream entry or even arhatship. Yeah, but that is not the correct path, but that is a sort of deceptive path, a false path. But now the skillful meditator will understand that these special experiences are just products of the meditation, and so they don't become attached to those experiences. And so the skillful meditator will, of course, they'll also have these experiences, but they let go of them and they keep on going back to the work of observing the arising and vanishing of mental and material phenomena. And so that is the correct path in contrast to the grasping onto those experiences, which is the false path. So that ability to distinguish, that is the knowledge of the true path and the false path. Okay, so once you get past that kind of obstacle and stay on the correct path, then one moves to the sixth purification. And this is called purification by knowledge and vision of the practice or the way. And this consists of 9 stages of insight knowledge, and I won't go into the details about them. Okay, so first comes knowledge of rise and fall, which is clearly seeing the constant arising and passing away of bodily and mental phenomena. And then when the knowledge of rise and fall becomes very strong, very powerful, then at a certain point, the attention to the arising of things falls away, and the meditator focuses only on the breakup and vanishing of phenomena. So whatever the meditator focuses on, he just sees everything is just breaking up and vanishing. Okay, then as the meditator is observing the breakup of all phenomena, he recognizes that all impermanent things in all of the realms of existence are fearful, sources of fear. Yeah, and by recognizing that all conditioned things are fearful, then the meditator now sees that attachment to them is dangerous. And then from this knowledge of fearfulness and danger comes the knowledge of what's called disenchantment. And the Pali word here is nibbida. Yeah, so one becomes, one loses one's illusions about things, and one has even no desire for a rebirth in any realm of existence, even the most delightful heavenly realms. And then from this disenchantment, there arises the strong desire for liberation, the desire to be liberated from all conditioned phenomena and to attain nibbana or liberation. Okay, so now in order to proceed on the way to liberation, it said the meditator again goes back to examining the 5 aggregates by way of the 3 characteristics, by way of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. And then when he or she clearly sees the phenomena by way of the 3 characteristics, this is called knowledge of reflection or reflective contemplation. Okay, and then this moves into the last stage of insight meditation, which is called knowledge of equanimity about formations. Okay, so the meditator has gone through the insight into non-self and sees that there's nothing that can be taken as I and mine. And so the fear, the sense of fear and danger that arose earlier, that fades away. And the meditator becomes just neutral towards all conditioned things. So this stage, this is called the knowledge of equanimity towards formations. Yeah, the word formations here, sankhara, that means all conditioned phenomena. Okay, now the next stage, sometimes the meditator can be in equanimity towards formations for long periods of time. But when the faculties become strong enough to enter, to attain the world transcending realization, then one reaches the next stage, which is called knowledge of conformity. This stage of knowledge of conformity, this is like a bridge that joins the preceding stages of insight with the world transcending path that follows. Okay, and then when one passes beyond, I just noticed the mistake. Okay, should be 7. Okay, so then, good thing I caught that. Okay, when one passes through knowledge of conformity, then one reaches the 7th purification called purification by knowledge and vision. And this, according to the Visuddhimagga scheme, this is explained as the 4 Lokuttara Magga, world transcending paths. That is the paths of stream entry, once returning, non-returning, and arahatship. And as we know, in an earlier class, I think it was the last one on the sequential training, I showed a chart on the 4 paths, which showed which fetters are eliminated by each path and how many rebirths remain with the attainment of each path. And with the attainment of the 4th path, the one of arhatship, then all the fetters are eliminated and there are no rebirths remaining. And so that would correspond to King Pasenadi entering the palace at Saketa, that is the Nibbana through non-clinging. So this is the explanation of the 7 stages of purification that has come down in the Visuddhimagga and plays a very fundamental role in the Theravada tradition, the Theravada meditative tradition. Okay, but I myself, being a good heretic, have developed a different interpretation of the 7 stages of purification. So I don't have any authority, so don't take this interpretation as being authoritative, but it's just another way to look at the 7 stages. Again, I prepared some notes on this interpretation. I think you can see them. So I said it's rather peculiar that the 7 Visuddhis are not mentioned as a group elsewhere in the Nikayas, only in MN, in Majjhima number 24. Yeah, we would have expected to see some suttas on the 7 purifications in the chapter on the 7s in the Anguttara Nikaya. Yeah, then in a sutta towards the end of the Digha Nikaya, we have 9 things to be developed. And we have here the first 7 purifications. And then in addition, we have purification by wisdom and purification by liberation. So this shows that this scheme of 7 purifications, it's a little bit suspicious that it might not come from the very early period. We don't see the Buddha himself teaching 7 stages of purification. And so I've tried to offer an alternative interpretation of the 7 stages. Okay, so first I started to develop that alternative interpretation based on a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Fours. It's number 194, which speaks of 4 kinds of striving for purity. We have purity of sila, purity of mind or citta, purity of view, and purity of liberation. And now the interesting one here is the striving for purity of view. And you see the definition here in this sutta is that the monk understands as it really is, this is suffering, this is its origin, its cessation, and the way to cessation. Now, in many places in the suttas, direct knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, as indicated here, is identified as the knowledge of a stream enterer and those at higher stages of attainment. Yeah, so in the Visuddhimagga scheme, purity of view means the beginning stage in the practice of insight meditation. But this definition seems to show that purity of view means the attainment of stream entry or one of the higher stages. And then to support my understanding, I looked at a few other suttas. So here's one from the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 56. It says that a noble disciple, a person accomplished in view, is one who understands directly the Four Noble Truths. And so that establishes the identity of having this experiential view of the Four Noble Truths with reaching the minimal status of stream enterer. Yeah, and then I found another sutta in Anguttara Nikaya. So it says, what is the wisdom of a trainee? And the word trainee is a technical term in the suttas indicating one who has reached at least stream entry, but has not yet attained arhatship. And the wisdom of the trainee is understanding directly the Four Noble Truths. Then another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, how has a monk attained the state of a noble one? This is Arya, and the noble ones are the stream enterers, once returning, non-returner, arhat. And the minimum state of the noble one is the stream enterer. And here the monk understands as it really is, this is suffering and so on, Four Noble Truths. And so when this sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya 4s, number 194, defines purity of view as understanding the Four Noble Truths, that seems to indicate that this stage means the attainment of stream entry. Okay, now we know that with the attainment of stream entry, that attainment eliminates 3 fetters, the 3 lower fetters. The first is the view of a self, the second is doubt, and the third is clinging to rules and observances as the path. Okay, so this is the 4th purification. Maybe put this here. Could then mean the elimination of the fetter of doubt accomplished with the attainment of stream entry. So with the third purification, purification of view, you gain realization of the Four Noble Truths, the fundamental truth of the Dhamma, and then that right view eliminates doubt. And now with the attainment of stream entry, one sees clearly that the Noble Eightfold Path is the correct path. And then you're no longer attracted to what is called sila bhatta, to taking the observance of mere rules and other observances to be the path. So that could be taken to be the purification by knowledge, distinguishing the correct path from the false path. Okay, then we come to the sixth purification. This is purification by knowledge and vision of the practice. And again, like the other expressions, this one is rather unique to the series. We don't find it elsewhere in the Nikayas. So perhaps this purification can be taken to indicate progress through the remaining stages of practice, including both insight and the next two paths and fruits. That is the stage of the once returner and the non-returner. And then finally, as you go through the other stages of practice, you arrive at the path of arahatship, which brings liberation. And so the path of arahatship could be considered purification by knowledge and vision. And then that sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya mentions purification by liberation, vibhuti visuddhi. And so this might be taken to be the fruit of arahatship. And that could be equivalent to the attainment of nibbana without clinging, which is mentioned as the goal in the sutta on the chariots. Yeah, so so this is the interpretation that I've sort of developed, but I think both interpretations have their own advantages. I think mine is probably corresponds better to the original intention of these 7 purifications. But the Visuddhimagga scheme maybe has the advantage that it includes the stages of insight that had been developed in the early commentaries. Okay, I think this can do for my presentation. I wanted to leave some time for questions. So if you want to ask the question, you can put up your hand symbol, or you have a question box, I think, in your Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, so I see some questions in the participant list.
Yeah, we have a question. What does restraint of the senses mean here exactly?
Basically, very simply, it means not letting it's really not letting the mind become entangled with the objects that appear through the senses, becoming entangled with pleasant objects through lust and attachment, and not becoming entangled with disagreeable objects through aversion and ill will. I think I dealt with restraint of the senses in greater detail in the second talk on the sequential training. So if you want details, you can try to find the YouTube video on that and check my explanation there. Okay, so I see some hands in the participant list, so I'll call. Okay, Samangi.
Yes, Bhante, thank you. So I am wondering, for example, there are these one step after the other of developing. And so understanding, I don't know whether the word is understanding, but understanding what nirvana is and liberation is, liberation is comes after several steps. And if I'm in a step much before that, I would not have understood what liberation is. So should I not think about the liberation part and just try to get from that step to the next one? Because it seemed like if I don't understand what liberation is, saying I want to attain it is not quite truthful, because I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I say by studying or reading these suttas and listening to Dhamma talks by reliable teachers, you have some idea about what Nibbana is. And then if you are a Buddhist, then you have faith in the Buddha when he says you should strive for Nibbana, or liberation. But just having the understanding is not experiential knowledge. But having the faith and the intellectual understanding motivates you to practice. And then when your practice comes to fulfillment, then you gain the experiential realization of liberation. Yeah, so that's the way it works.
Thank you.
Okay, let's say I see in the participant list, there is a name in the Cyrillic characters. So that will be somebody from the Russian-speaking world. So let's take their question first. Because my regular students can ask questions anytime, but
Okay. The question from the chat: are the stages of purification reversible? Once attained a certain stage, can you regress to a previous stage, or the purification is one way, just as one way?
okay. So the earliest stages of purification are, you could fall away from them. So let us just say that, okay, suppose I'm just trying to get, okay, this one. Okay, so suppose one has reached purification of view. This is the Visuddhimagga scheme. And then one doesn't continue one's practice, then one could fall away from purification of view. If you're not even doing samadhi meditation, you can fall away from purification of mind. And even if you start breaking the precepts, then you fall away from purification of virtue. But if you fall away and it's not too serious, then if you want to start making progress again and you start to practice again, then you can practice, or you can make more rapid progress than somebody who has never gone through these purifications before. But once you reach the 4 world transcending stages, or the noble stages, then once you reach one stage, you can't fall away to a lower stage. Okay, so that will be my answer to that question.
Okay. The question is about the cases when we have a bad life, but rebirth in this life, in a family with alcoholic addiction, drug addiction, and so on. And okay, if we born in this kind of family, it is a kind of bad karma for us. So if it happens, how can a person to practice, even being addicted in alcoholic, even living in such kind of family and so on, how it could be possible for such kind of person to practice, to keep belief in Dhamma and so on?
if the person is born into a bad family. Is that the question?
Yeah, right.
Is the person an alcoholic themselves or not?
Both of these cases, bad family and alcoholic addiction and so on.
If the person is an alcoholic addiction, is an alcoholic or a drug addict, first they have to kick the habit before they can really practice seriously. There might be some Buddhist practices that can help a person overcome their addiction, but that's not the topic that I'm dealing with in the lecture today. I'm dealing with the actual stages of progression towards towards the attainment of Nibbana. Okay, let me take the question from the participant list from Osmond. Osmond.
Yes, Bhante, I was wondering if you could send out your notes.
Oh, okay.
us.
I'll try to find a way to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then Sud.
Thank you, Bhante. I think you sort of answered my question, but I just so basically, if during Buddha's time, people had like a meditation object, and then they went into seclusion and they came out after a while with a level of realization. Are they going through, like, I guess that's purification of the mind that they're doing, and then I guess preliminarily they already had purification of virtue, I guess.
They already had what?
Purification of virtue, I guess.
Well, maybe some did, maybe some didn't. They had to start by observing precepts. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you, when you sit and then you meditate and you go into jhanas, is that purification of mind? And then I guess you look back after the jhana, then that's purification of view to see if is that correct? Like, am I getting the right understanding here? Like, I guess you get jhanas and then you look back and say, oh, this is just impermanent, and then that becomes the purification of you.
It's a bit more complex than that, but what one has to do in the case of the jhana attainer is start analyzing the jhanic experience by way of the 5 aggregates, seeing the different components of the jhana, seeing how the jhana is made up. The jhana experience is made up of different components, which can be sorted out amongst the 5 aggregates. And that way you start to see the jhanic experience by way of the name and form, nama rupa, mental and material phenomena. Okay,
Gotcha.
I think we have to come to an end today. Okay, so we're finished now. Okay, so this will be the end of this lecture, and this will be the last talk in the series. So we could consider whether to do a new series maybe next year after the winter break. And so I'll just briefly share the merits, briefly and quickly. Dukkha pata jani dukkha, bhaya pata jani bhaya, soka pata jani soka, pantu sabepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all beings also be thus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay.
Sadhu.
Then we could end with 3 bows to the Buddha. 1, 2, 3. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you especially to Oleg for translating into Russian.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, so let's end the stop share. Okay, so again, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you,
Bhante.
Thank you,
Sadhu,
Bhante.
sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
sadhu.
Okay, so I'll have to go
Олег,
up.
спасибо.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you, Bhante.